Hello to all my wild darlings and 24-hour not quite party people. Lovely to have you with me. Lovely to be here with you. I am Tad. I will be here for approximately the next hour. I sometimes run a little over, depending on where in the story I am and trying to find a good spot to end. But other than that, roughly an hour, maybe a bit more. And I will be continuing to read from River of Blue Fire. We have some good stuff tonight. And I mentioned in the introduction or the description of the video. And we shall see what we shall see. Until then, excuse me, I am a tired guy today. I had a very nice day, but no complaints. But did quite a long interview this afternoon with Andrew's Wizardly Reads, and then had various other things had to be done, and then we had family over to visit, which was lovely, of course, too. And then Deb clonked out just when the family went home. She had hit her evening end, her witching hour. So, and I've been prepping other things and doing stuff, but it's been a long day and way too much talking, for especially way too much Tad. I guess when people interview me that's what they want me to do, and certainly it's something I have never been shy about doing. But I also, by the time, this is always true when I do a book tour or something, by the time I've been doing it for a week or week and a half or, whatever, but, well into the tour or whatever it is, I am just so tired of hearing my own voice. And of course, here I am again at 1 o'clock in the morning, going to be spouting off again. Believe it or not, I really do not think, that I am, always somebody worth listening to, although occasionally I say something interesting. And nor do I particularly value listening to myself. I don't particularly like looking at myself all that much either, which is when I'm doing these readings, I've got, right this moment, I've got my own face in front of me because I'm seeing what the outgoing, video looks like. Don't like that all that much either. I'm just getting more curmudgeonly as I get older, and one of my curmudgeons, if it is can be used as a verb, one of the things I am curmudgeonly about is I'm just not that interested in me. I live with me, but don't get me wrong, I am not a curmudgeon in the sense that therefore I am opposed to or grumpy with the people who actually for some reason want to hear what I have to say. I'm incredibly grateful for that, believe me. And I was just talking about that with my wife and kids today about, that thank God I still sell books. Thank God I can still make a living as a writer. No, we haven't had any big film or TV things that have turned into anything yet or whatever. And so I am not one of those super well-known people, but God bless it. My readers seem to like my books and continue to read them. And, that is a blessing. That is an absolute blessing. And I never forget that. I have the best day job in the world. And it's all of you folks out there that make it possible for me. Well, more than just the people listening to this broadcast, I hope. I have to sell more books than that. As wonderful as all of you listening right now are, don't get me wrong. But it's like I told my mom once when I first, became a writer and had my first couple of books published. And even by the time I was getting into Green Angel Tower or something, and my mom was still going out and buying multiple copies of my books and giving them to people and well, I'm just supporting you, hon. And I was like, Mom, I really appreciate it. You're a great mom. But if you were the only person buying my books, or if you were going to make the difference between me going bankrupt or not, I'd be in a lot of trouble. So thank goodness I actually have more readers, or had more readers back then than just my mom. Bless her. Anyway, so what else is there to tell you about? As I said, slightly busy day around the house. Went to a baseball game last night, and staying true to my current form, my hometown team, the San Francisco Giants, lost again. And I say again, not just because they've been losing a lot in general, but because like the last 8 times I've been to Giants games over the last couple of years, last 3 years or so, they've lost every single time. My mojo has gone completely the wrong direction, and I am now a curse to the team that I grew up supporting, which is sad. And then today, the day after I went to the game, they had a great day. You know, won handily, everybody played well, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas the night before, when I'd actually been there present with friends at the stadium, they just looked ghastly. They like made stupid mistakes. They, overran bases. All this is baseball stuff. You don't need to know about baseball. It's too complicated to explain. And none of you probably want to know about it anyway. But it's been a lifelong love of mine. So anyway, but the thing is, the trip itself was fun, and hanging out with everybody was fun. And, that was all way good. Oh God, me and my Giants luck right now. I am completely the ancient mariner with the albatross hung around my neck. What else? Doggies are doing well under the circumstances. Circumstances being Johnny is very old, and Lemon is sweet, but she wants to play, and Johnny's not interested. But other than that, they're doing okay. And I'm working when I can. Didn't get much chance today, but I'm working when I can on the new book, the new Flans Crows book, I guess I'll call it for lack of a better term, which is of course the follow-up to The Splintered Sun, which is coming out this fall. And that's enough advertising, you guys. If you probably all know it anyway, because if you're kind and loyal enough to keep tuning me in the middle of the night, or not the middle of the night for you folks, most of you, but in the middle of the night, you probably already know that I've got a book coming out. So what else? Not much of really anything else. And believe me, I've done plenty of talking about myself today. And that is a punishment I no longer need to keep inflicting on anyone. Not that I'm, as you've seen, if people want to send, give me questions while we're doing the reading, I probably won't see them unless it's here at the very beginning. But you're always welcome to ask a question or to make an assertion or to challenge me to a duel. Although I know it's kind of hard to slap someone in the face with a glove over Facebook. It's not hard metaphorically. It's actually rather easy. But, if I'm going to duel somebody, I expect to be slapped with a real glove in the real world. So anyway, I'm going to check in and see who has left messages and say hello. So first off the line is Alexandra Lirup. Hello, Alexandra. Christy Sanders. Hello, as always. Daniel Scarphammer. Or Scarphamera. But anyway, good to see you checking in from Sweden. Suzanne Owen is checking in from Yorkshire. Cooler weather. Hooray, I'm very glad. Mr. Mark Craigbaum, a star of stage, screen, and poetry anthologies. I wants to know how I resisted the direct injection of Felix the Cat into the Jongleur verse. Well, who knows? Maybe, because my feeling is the kitchen is also a lot of these virtual worlds that the characters are going through were actually created for Felix Jongleur, which is why many of them have a late 19th, early 20th century vibe to them, because they go back to an earlier part of his life and things like that. So it could very well be that the kitchen, the night kitchen or the midnight kitchen or whatever you want to call it, that might be one of his. And it's the kind of place where Felix the Cat could be hiding in the background somewhere, as could many other characters of that type, like Betty Boop and Coco the Clown and Oswald the Rabbit, who is the precursor to Mickey Mouse for the Disney company. Anyway, so who else is here? Maria Jose, hello, checking in from Valencia. Nice to have you with us, as always. Dirk, hello, good morning, good night, and best wishes to you too. Lovely to have you. Penny Davies, hello, good to see you. Isaac Tim, checking in from the Valley in Utah. Isaac, good to see you. Wouter says, grumpy after waking up to a minor but annoying elbow healing setback. I'm sorry to hear it. I know how that kind of thing goes. But anyway, hope you feel better soon. Nikki Chetwind, hello. And Nikki Chetwind also has good weather news, saying that it is a thankfully cooler and overcast day in Leicestershire. Christina Speirer says, also gives similar reports. Apparently much of Germany is getting some overcast and a little bit of rain, which is a good thing after the horrid heat wave that you guys have all been going through over there. So Christina checks in from Berlin with a report. Suzanne says the black cat looks quite chilled. If that's TJ, yes, TJ is very chilled. He is very laid back compared to PJ, who is the large orange fellow. And PJ is always kind of bustling around and checking on things and knocking things over to see what happens and stuff like that, whereas TJ is much more laid back. Chill, it exactly is a correct description for TJ. Iris is here. Hello, Iris. Good to see you, as always. Mark Redmond checking in from a much cooler Yorkshire. Good to hear it. James Werfs. Hello. Good to see you. New name, Nemoyan Pa. Okay, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If it's Nemoian or Nemoyan or whatever it is, please let me know because I like to pronounce names correctly. Thank you for joining us and welcome aboard. Lovely to have you. Nicole says good morning and hi to everyone. And Dirk says, the rain woke me up. The best sound. And yes, after that heat wave, I can imagine. Chris Fobb, a little late to the party. You're not late. I haven't even started reading, and I didn't have anything interesting to say today. Who else is here? Andre, hello, good to see you. Tash Joyce, Felix the cat, the wonderful, wonderful cat. Whenever he gets in a fix, he reaches into his bag of tricks. What do I remember from the theme song? Felix the cat, the wonderful, wonderful cat. You'll laugh so hard your sides will ache. Your heart will go pitter-pat watching Felix the wonderful cat. That's the theme song I remember, or the part of the theme song. Troy Marshall, good morning to all, and morning back to you. And Alexandra chimes in to say the Netherlands is also having more normal weather and is very glad about it. Kristen Rule, hello, Kristen, one of our most faithful what's the word I want? Participants. One of our most faithful participants. Kristen, good to see you as always. And Tony Graham, hello. Nice to have you with us too. So, all right, let me go back here and see if there's anything else I'm going to do. And otherwise, I'm going to start reading because it's already almost 15 minutes after and I have dibbled and dabbled and dallied and faffed. There's a good British term. The best thing about one of the many great things about the UK is the many uses of language in the UK and the many expressions. Because when I lived there, when Deb and I were first living together, when I lived there, I'm very quick to pick up on accents, even subconsciously. And as you've heard me here, I do many accents, most of them not very well, but they do, pop up in my head. And I have a bad habit sometimes subconsciously of mirroring people that I meet who are talking in a new and interesting way. So when I moved to the UK, having remembered kids who went away to England for a year and came back talking very posh, I said, I am not going to pick up an accent. I will actively work not to pick up an accent because, first of all, that's going to sound super stupid in England, and it will sound stupid to me when I get back to America. So I worked really hard not to do that. I mean, I actually had to make a conscious effort. And part of the reason is because although I didn't pick up, or I didn't let myself pick up any kind of British accent, I definitely picked up a lot of British expressions. And I've told you about some of them that I love, like mad as a stick and pissed as a newt and all kinds of things like that. And I mentioned this because I just said faffing a little earlier, and faffing is another great British term. And I say British here because I'm not sure what part of it's not just England, right? It's Wales, it's England, it's Scotland, it's Northern Ireland. Ireland is not part of Britain, but there's a lot of cultures and dialects and even languages in Britain. So I'm not sure where faffing originally came from, but it is a term for basically wasting time when you're supposed to be doing something else, or kind of dithering maybe is the closest American, although that has a different connotation. Dithering kind of has a connotation of kind of helplessness and being kind of dippy. Whereas faffing is just more about like not doing what you're supposed to because you're walking around doing other things instead. And after a softball game in the UK, somebody would always go like, "Quit faffing, we're going to the pub," and basically saying, "Stop messing about, let's go." So, although I did avoid picking up a British accent. I did not avoid picking up all kinds of UK expressions, and I still use them because they're just part of my vocabulary now. So I say things like, use expressions like chuffed. Oh, I was dead chuffed about that. And of course, my American friends always look at me like, "Did you just cough in the middle of a sentence?" I'm going, "No, chuffed, chuffed. I'm chuffed. That means I'm pleased as punch. I am happy." I'm like, "Well, why don't you just say it?" And I'm going, "Because never mind." It's kind of a constant thing. And it used to make people laugh when I was playing basketball at the YMCA here when I got back, because I was doing all of my cursing with various British terms, which was good actually, because people didn't understand when they were being sworn at or when I was swearing at myself or whatever. So there is an advantage to it, as well as just the amusement value of picking up and using and keeping for yourself new expressions. Anyway, so now I'm going to read. And what we were reading last was Rini and Kabu in the weird Kansas that was connected to what used to be an Oz simulation, but is now just Kansas. And the characters all fled back to this Kansas simulation, and the Scarecrow is one of those who left Oz and came back, and is apparently, as we've been told by the character of Azador, who is a prisoner of the Scarecrow and is sharing a cell with Rini and Kabu. And we are told that Scarecrow was one of the real people playing in the simulation, or using the simulation. One of the few who was still a human being, because Tin Man and Lion were both replaced by somebody or something else, and it's not quite clear what. But we're going to learn more about them later on. So anyway, Rini and Kabu are in a prison cell with this guy Azador, who they don't know who or what he is or where he comes from, because he's very close-mouthed. But the thing that they do know is that he apparently is a real human, or at least he knows that it's a simulation, and that he is not, unlike the characters in the simulation who are not aware of being anything other than what they represent. Azador is aware that he is a human and is from outside of the Otherland network. So anyway, that's basically what's going on, and I'm just going to jump back in and read. I'm going to go back just a little bit because this part has significance for the next bit. Their cellmate, now engrossed in, this is Azador, their cellmate, now engrossed in his quiet whistling again, made a vague hand gesture, bidding them amuse themselves however they pleased. "I will tell you another story with the string game," Kabu said. "We use it sometimes to teach stories to the children." He suddenly looked abashed. "I do not mean to say that I think you are a child, Rini." He examined her face and was reassured. "This is a story of how the hare got his split lip. It is also a story of Grandfather Mantis. May I ask you a question before you start? Mantis, Grandfather Mantis, is he an insect or an old man?" Her friend chortled. "He is an insect, of course, but he is also an old man, the oldest of his family and the eldest of the first people. Remember, in the earliest days, all the animals were people." Rini tried to figure this out. "So is he tiny or big?" She could not help remembering the terrible razor-limbed monstrosity that had stalked them through the hive. From the look that passed along his long face, across his long face, she could see Kabu remembered too. Grandfather Mantis rides between the horns of the eland, so he is very small, but he is oldest and cleverest of the first people, the grandfather of the elder race, so he is very big too. Ah, she examined his expression, but could see no mockery. Then I suppose I'm ready for the story. Kabu nodded. He quickly brought his fingers apart and began to move them. Kabu is playing a string game, by the way. Kabu nodded. He quickly brought his fingers apart and began to move them in and out until another many-angled pattern had formed. In the early days, there was a time when Grandfather Mantis was sick and almost felt himself to be dying. He had eaten biltong, that is dried meat, that he had stolen from his own son, Kwamanga the Rainbow. And when Kwamanga found out it was gone, he said, "Let that biltong be alive again in the stomach of the person who has stolen from me." He did not know it was his own father. And so the biltong became alive again in the stomach of Grandfather Mantis and gave him a terrible pain. Kabu's fingers flexed and the picture rippled. A shape near the middle wriggled from side to side, so that Rini could almost see Grandfather Mantis writhing in his agony. He went to his wife, Rock Rabbit, and told her he felt himself to be very ill. She told him to go into the bush and find water, so that by drinking he would soothe himself. Groaning, he went away. There was no water close by, and Mantis walked for many days, until he came at last to the Tsodilo Hills, and in their heights he found the water he had been seeking. Drinking deeply, he felt better and decided he would rest a while before returning to his home. The baboon hands moved through a succession of shapes, and Rini saw the hills rise and the water shimmer. A short distance away, Azador had stopped whistling and seemed to be listening. But back in Grandfather Mantis's kraal, everyone was frightened that he had not returned, and they feared that if he died, they would never see him again, for no one of the early race had ever died before. So his wife, Rock Rabbit, sent her cousin, the hare, to go and look for him. For just a brief moment, Hare made his appearance in the net of string, then bounded off. Hare ran in Mantis's footprints all the way to the Sodilo Hills, for he was a very swift runner, and reached them by nightfall. When he had climbed the hills, he found Mantis sitting beside the water, drinking and bathing the dust from his body. "Grandfather," said Hare, "your wife and your children and all the other first people sent to ask how you are. They fear that you are dying, and thus that they will never see you again." Mantis was feeling much better, and he was sorry that all the others were worried. "Go back to them and say that they are foolish. There is no true death," he told Hare. "What, do you think that when we die, we are like this grass?" He lifted a handful of grass. "That we die and, feeling ourselves to be like the dry grass, turn into this dust?" He lifted the dust in his other hand and flung it into the air, then pointed at the moon which hung in the night sky. Grandfather Mantis himself had caused the moon to be, but that is another story. "Go and tell them," he said, "that as the moon dies, but then is made new, so too in dying they shall be made new, and thus they should have no fear. And so he sent the hare back down out of the hills, bearing his message. But Hare was of the sort who believes himself very clever, and as he ran back toward the kraal of Grandfather Mantis and his family, he thought to himself, Old Mantis cannot be certain of this, for does not everything die and turn to dust? If I give them this foolish message, they will think me foolish, and I shall never find a bride, and the other people of the early race will turn away from me. So when he reached the kraal, where Rock Rabbit and all the rest were waiting for him, he told them, Grandfather Mantis says that dying we will not be renewed like the moon, but instead like the grass we will turn into dust. And so all the people of Mantis's family told all the other first people what Hare told them Grandfather Mantis had said. And all the first people were filled with great fear and wept and fought among themselves. Thus, when Mantis himself came back to his home with his bag of hartebeest skin over one shoulder and his digging stick in his hand, he found everyone full of sadness. When he learned what the hare had said, and which was now being spoken as the truth by all the first people in the world, he was so angry that he lifted his digging stick and struck the hare, splitting his lip. Then he told Hare that none of the bushes or grass of the veldt or rocks of the desert pans would ever keep him safe, and that his enemies would always seek him and find him. And that is why the hare has a split lip. The last string picture vibrated for a moment between Kabu's outstretched hands. Then he brought his palms together, making it disappear. That was lovely. Rini would have said more, but Azador abruptly stood. Time to go. Rini's arms were starting to hurt. This doesn't make any sense. It does not make sense to you, Azador said airily. Just keep your hands pressed flat. Rini muttered a curse. The position, facing the wall, with her arms spread wide, pushing against the cold cement, was unpleasantly reminiscent of being arrested. Azador was lying on his stomach between her feet, with his hands also pressed against the wall, parallel to hers, but just above the floor. All right, she said. You have convinced me you're out of your mind. What now? Now it's what's-your-name's turn, Monkey Man. Azador craned to look over his shoulder at Kabu, who was watching with a certain lack of enthusiasm. Pick a spot, as close to the center as possible, where the middle of an X would be if our hands were on the ends. Then hit it. It is a very hard wall, Kabu pointed out. Azador's laugh was a grunt of irritation. You are not going to break it down with your hand, with your little hand, Monkey Man. Just do what I say. Kabu slid in so that his head was against Rini's stomach, just below her breasts. It made her uncomfortable, but her friend did not hesitate. When he had chosen his spot, he struck with the flat of his hand. Before the smack had finished, echoing from the cell's hard surfaces, the section of wall demarcated by their extended arms had vanished, leaving a blank white surface on all the exposed edges. With nothing left to support her, Rini stumbled forward into the next cell. How did you do that? She demanded. Azador's smile was infuriatingly self-satisfied. This is VR, Ms. Otepi. All make-believe. I just know how to make it believe something different. Now that part of the wall thinks it is no longer a wall. Kabu had sidled through and was looking around the empty cell, an exact replica of the one they had just left. But what good has this done us? Must we do this through every wall until we are outside? Azador's pleased expression did not change. He walked to the new cell's door. One tug of the handle and it slid sideways, open to the hallway. No one bothers to lock the empty cells. To cover her irritation at the man's success, her first impulse had been to say, "That's cheating," which she knew would have been a marvelously stupid remark. She slid past him and peered into the hallway. There was nothing but mint green cement and closed doors all the way to the turning of the corridor on both sides, the monotony broken only by posters depicting the scarecrow, a healthy, vibrant, stern scarecrow, proclaiming 10,000 munchkins dead. For what? Remember Oz, and Emerald needs you. There's no one out there. Let's go. Rini turned to Azador. Do you know how to get out of here? There is a service bay at the back of the cells. There may be guards, but there will be fewer than at the front, where all the government offices are. Then let's do it. She took a few steps, then looked at Kabu. What's wrong? He shook his head. I hear something. Smell something. I am not sure. A flat boom broke the stillness, so faint as to be almost inaudible. Someone might have dropped a book on a table a few rooms away. The sound was repeated a few times, then silence fell again. Well, whatever it is, it's a long way away, Rini declared. We'd better not wait for it to get here. Not only the corridor before their cell, but all the corridors were empty. The sound of their hurrying footsteps, or hers and Azador's, since Kabu's feet made only the faintest noise, rebounded eerily from the long walls as they ran and made Rini uneasy. Where is everybody? I told you this place is falling apart, said Azador. The war has been going on for years. Scarecrow has only a few minions left. Why do you think we were the only prisoners? The others have been set free and then sent to fight in forest or in the works. Rini did not even want to know what the works was. First Atasco's realm, then the destruction of the hive. Now this. Would these sim worlds simply crumble into virtual dust like the veldt grass of Kabu's story? Or would something even more sinister replace them? Go slow, Kabu said. I hear something, and I feel something too. It is tapping in my chest. Something is wrong here. What the hell does that mean? Azador demanded. We're almost at the loading bay. We are sure as hell not just going to stop. You should trust him, Rini said. He knows what he's talking about. Moving more cautiously, they rounded a corner and found themselves at a nexus of corridors. In the middle of the open area lay a tall man with a long green beard and a pair of smashed green spectacles. An antique rifle of some kind lay beside him. He was clearly dead. Several things that should have been inside him had oozed out onto the floor. Rini fought an urge to vomit. Why did people have innards in this simulation, but not in the bug world? Azador took a wide route around the body. The loading bay is just another 100 meters this way, he whispered, pointing to where the wide corridor bent sharply. We can... A scream of pain rattled through the corridor, so fierce that Rini's knees went weak. Even Azador was clearly shaken, but the three of them went cautiously to the bend in the corridor and peered around. On the wide loading ramp at the end of the corridor, several more men with green beards and spectacles were fighting to the death to keep an army of TikToks at bay. The Greenbeards were supported in their struggle by a few even odder creatures: skinny men with wheels for hands and feet, a teddy bear with a pop gun, other soldiers that seemed to be made entirely of paper, but the defenders were clearly outgunned and several dozen of them had been destroyed. Only one of the TikToks had gone down, although 2 or 3 others were staggering in circles with their insides blown out. But the green-bearded soldiers appeared to have exhausted their ammunition and were now using their long rifles exclusively as clubs. Sensing imminent victory, the buzzing TikToks were swarming closer to the defenders, like flies around a dying animal. Damn! Rini was almost as irritated as she was frightened. Games! These people and their bloody stupid war games! Let me try that one again. Damn! Rini was almost as irritated as she was frightened. Games! These people and their bloody stupid war games! It will not be a game if those things get us, Azador hissed. Turn back. We will go out another way. As they returned to the places where the corridors crossed, and where the first defender's body they had encountered still lay, Kabu reached up to tug at Rini's hand. Why? Why is this dead one here, when the fighting is still at the entrance? It took Rini a moment to understand what he was asking, and by that time they had left the green-bearded corpse behind them. Their cellmate had turned right and was sprinting up the corridor. Azador! She called, but he had stopped already. 2 more corpses lay near the wall at the next corridor branch. 2 bodies in 3 pieces, since the soldier's top half had been forcibly separated from his bottom half. Beside him lay the pulped remains of one of the flying monkeys. Loud simian squawking echoed from the side corridor. More monkeys in pain and terror. We do not need to go that way, said Azador in relief. I have remembered another route. He started to move forward and did not turn even when a very human, very female scream came bouncing down the passageway. Emily! Rini shouted at Azador's retreating back. I think that is a friend. He did not turn or slow down, even when she cursed at him. Kabu had already started down the corridor toward Emily's voice. Rini hurried to catch up. They had just caught sight of a battle that, although now familiar, would never be less than bizarre. Flying monkeys and mechanical men struggling to the death, when Emily's slender form burst from the melee and came running toward them. Rini grabbed at her as she tried to run past and was almost knocked down. The girl fought like a tail-dangled cat until Rini wrapped her arms around her and squeezed as hard as she could. It's me, Emily. It's me. We are going to help you, she said over and over until the girl stopped struggling and finally looked at her new captors. Her already panic-widened eyes grew wider. You! The strangers! Before Rini could reply, a monkey flew past them down the corridor, but not under its own power. It smacked against one wall, flopped bonelessly, and skidded. We have to go, Rini said. Come on! She took one of the girl's hands, and Kabu took the other as they sprinted away from the unpleasant sounds of buzzing and claw-crunched monkeys. Azador was not in sight, but they turned in the direction he had gone. Emily, as though she had not been under TikTok attack, it's hard to say, Emily, as though she had not been under TikTok attack only a few moments earlier, babbled happily. I didn't think you'd come back, or I didn't think I'd come back, really. The king, he had this machine do all these funny things to me. It was worse than anything the medical Henrys ever do. Made me feel all goosebumpy. And you know what? Rini was doing her best to ignore her. Do you hear anything? she asked Kabu. Any more of those machine men ahead of us? He shrugged his narrow shoulders and tugged at Emily's hand, trying to get her to move faster. Do you know what he said to me? Emily went on. It was such a surprise. I thought I thought I was in trouble, see? And that they were going to send me to the bad farm. That's the place you go when they catch you trying to steal from the food barn, like this other Emily I know. And she went there for just a few months, but when she came back, she looked like she was way much older. But do you know what they said to me? Emily, shut up. Rini slowed them now as they turned another corner. This one opened into a wide room with polished tile floors and shiny metal staircases leading to a mezzanine. More monkey corpses were scattered about the floor here, and also the bodies of a pair of tic-tocs, which had apparently tumbled through the mezzanine handrail, where it was bent like silver licorice. The wind-up men had smashed like expensive watches dropped onto pavement. But next to one of them, something was moving. Emily was still prattling. He told me that I'm going to have a little baby. It was Azador. A dying spasm from one of the tic-tocs had fastened on his leg, and now he was struggling to pull himself free of the thing's locked grip. He looked up at their approach. His fearful expression quickly turned to one of annoyance. Get this thing off me, he growled. But before he could say more, he was interrupted by a shriek from Emily so loud that Rini flinched away from her in pain. Henry! Emily skittered across the room and leaped over one of the smashed tic-tocs, then flung herself onto Azador. Her attack thumped him back against the floor so hard that his leg jerked free of the claw, tearing his overalls and leaving red wheals on his ankle. Emily climbed on him like an overstimulated puppy, and he could not push her away. Henry! She squealed. My prettiest Henry! My pudding heart lover! My special Christmas treat! She stopped, straddling his chest as he looked back at her in stunned surprise. Guess what? She demanded. Guess what the king just told me? You and me, we made a baby! The high-ceilinged room fell silent in the wake of this revelation. After a moment, the dead tic-toc made a clicking noise, and the claw that had held Azador's ankle ratcheted one final time, then froze again. This, said Rini at last, is really, really strange. Chapter 16. Shoppers and Sleepers. Netfeed News. Experts debate slow time prisons. Visual file footage of morgue attendant checking drawers. Voiceover. The UN is sponsoring a debate between civil libertarians and penologists about a controversial technique known as slow timing, in which prisoners' metabolisms are slowed by cryotherapy while they are simultaneously exposed to subliminal messaging, so that a 20-year prison term would seem to pass in months. Visual Telfer in front of UN. Ramel Telfer of the civil rights group Humanity is Watching calls this further evidence that we have become what he terms a people-processing society. Telfer. They say they want these prisoners to return to society more quickly, but they just want more manageable prisoners and faster turnaround. Instead of trying to prevent crime, we spend our money on more and more expensive methods of punishing people. Bigger prisons, more police. Now they want to take some poor jerk who's stolen someone's wallet and spend $500,000 of the taxpayers' credits to put him in a coma. Another pair of the voracious salad tongs leaped from the water and flung itself at them, the huge jaws snapping like a bear trap. Chief Strike Anywhere managed to dodge the attack, but the tongs smashed against the birch bark rail as they fell back into the river, and Orlando and the others were rattled violently in the bottom of the canoe. Another shutter rolled Orlando on his belly and onto the knobby hilt of the sword he thought he had lost. Then a shout of pain from the Indian made him sit up. One of the pairs of salad tongs had the chief by the arm and was trying to drag him into the river. As Orlando watched in horror, the arm began to stretch like taffy. He snatched up his sword. He snatched up his sword and brought it down on the tongs as hard as he could, just behind the teeth. The impact shook him from fingers to spine, but the tongs let go of the chief, sent Orlando an evil look, then sank back into the roiling water. Chief Strike Anywhere rubbed his arm, which had already snapped back to its former size and shape, then turned to renew the battle. A chorus of thin voices from close by made Orlando wonder if someone might be coming to rescue them, but it was only the vegetables on the shoreline who had disassembled their conga line to crowd along the water's edge. Most were watching the attack on the canoe in thrilled horror, although some, particularly the stewed beets, seemed to find the whole thing wildly funny, and they were shouting out useless, drunken advice indiscriminately to both boaters and predatory utensils. Something thumped them at the waterline once more, and the little boat shuddered. Orlando braced himself, then raised the sword over his head. He knew that at any moment now the canoe would go over, and he was determined to take at least one of the hinged, blunt-headed creatures with him. Fredericks rose beside him, trying to fit an arrow to his bowstring, even as the canoe seesawed briefly on the handle of one of the attackers, then dropped back into the water. The ruckus from the shore was suddenly pierced by a scream of anguish. Some of the vegetables in the front row, jostled by the gawkers behind them, and the dozens more hurrying out of the upturned colander to see what was happening, had been forced out into the river. A little cherry tomato was wailing piteously, floating farther and farther from the riverbank. A head of lettuce, a flower lay, still looped about its widest circumference, waded out after the tomato, shrieking. Something split the water beside the lettuce. The head was tossed up into the air, then fell back. More jaws flashed and clacked shut. Even at a great distance, Orlando could hear the fibrous crunching. As lettuce leaves flew everywhere, the whole school of tongs hurried to the vicinity. Panicked, the beachfront spectators began to blunder into each other as they fled the feeding frenzy, and in the chaos several more fell into the water. Bits of tomato pulp and bleeding beet now streamed from toothy jaws. A carrot wearing a barbecue apron was lifted up out of the water and snapped in half. Within moments, the water around the canoe had grown calm, while a stone's throw away the river's edge was a froth of snapping tongs and vegetable parts. Chief Strike Anywhere picked up his paddle and turned the canoe again toward the middle of the river. "Lucky for us," he grunted. "Them like salad better." That's horrible. Fredericks was leaning on the side of the canoe, fascinated by the murderous violence. A scum of pureed vegetables was quickly forming along the river's edge. "It them fault," replied Strike Anywhere coldly. "They get tongues worked up in first place. Smell of vegetables make them crazy." Orlando could not help feel sorry for the little cherry tomato. It had cried just like a lost child. "No one can take you to land that side," Strike Anywhere told their tortoise passenger later, as they floated in the slow current at midstream. A little mist lay on the river here, so that the banks were almost invisible, the cabinets only dim shapes towering on either side. "Tongs very busy there for a long time." "I perfectly understand." The tortoise had only recently reemerged from his shell, where he had retreated during the attack. "And I have no wish to be deposited on the other side, which is strange to me. Perhaps I will stay with you a while, if you don't mind, and then you can set me ashore later." Strike Anywhere grunted and began to paddle again. "We have got to get out of here, Orlando," Fredericks said quietly. This all just scans too majorly. I mean, it would be bad enough just to get killed, but sixth by something out of a silverware drawer? Orlando smiled wearily. If we help you find your papoose, he called to the chief, will you help us to leave the kitchen? We don't belong here, and we need to find our friends. The chief turned, his long-nosed face shrewd in the dim bulb light from above. No can go back up faucet, he said. Have to go out other end of kitchen. Before he could explain further, a sound came to them from across the waters, a chorus of piping voices that Orlando thought for a moment might be survivors from the terrible vegetable massacre. Except these voices were raised in intricate three-part harmony. I'm not going to try to sing this because I don't know a tune for it, but sing we now, we rodents three, sightless all since infancy. Can't see, but we sing con brio, a blind note-bleeding field mouse trio. A shape appeared in the fog, long and cylindrical, surmounted by three vertical figures. As it drew closer, it was revealed to be three mice in matching dark glasses perched atop a bottle, which, with impossibly clever pink feet, they rolled beneath them like a lumberjack's log, never once losing their balance. Their arms were looped about each other's shoulders. The outside mouse on one end held a tin cup, the one at the other end a white cane. And ever since our mummy birthed us, we love to clean up every surface. Just pour enough to fill this cup and wipe those stains and spills right up. Three little mice. We like to sing, but love to clean more than anything. And if you use us, we suspect, you'll also find we disinfect. A one-eyed bat could see it's true. Blind Mice Cleanser will work for you. The tinny barbershop harmonies were so perfect and so completely silly that when the song was finished, Orlando could think of nothing to do but applaud. The tortoise did too. Fredericks gave him an irritated look, but reluctantly joined in. Only Chief Strike Anywhere remained stoically silent. The three mice, still rolling the bottle beneath them, took a deep bow. Now available in family size, squeaked the one holding the cane. The word family may have touched a chord in the chief, or he might only have been waiting courteously for the mice to finish their song. He asked, You seen bad men on big boat with little papoose? They could hardly have seen anything, suggested the tortoise. Now, could they? No, we don't see much, agreed one of the mice. But we listen a lot, added another. We may have heard this particular tot. The third nodded gravely as he spoke. A big boat passed us 2 hours ago. They didn't seem to like our show. A baby was crying. We thought that was sad. And jeepers, those men sounded pretty bad. After a pause, the one with the cane piped up again. They didn't smell too good either, it said in a conspiratorial whisper. Atne ute in clay, if you see what we're saying. Strike Anywhere leaned forward. Which way they go? The mice put their heads together and indulged in a great deal of quiet but animated discussion. At last they turned back, spread their arms, then began to do a chorus kick, while still keeping the cleanser bottle revolving merrily beneath them. A very good trick, even Fredericks had to admit later. The shores of Gitchy Goomy may be shady, green, and nice, they sang, but except saying hi to Hiawatha, the trip's not worth the price. The spot you seek is closer. You can be there in a trice. Those kidnapping chaps have followed old maps to the famous box of ice. The mouse with the tin cup waved it in a circle and added, Don't forget, it's almost spring. Time to scrub your surfaces daisy fresh. Then the trio danced their pink feet so fast that the bottle swung around until its nose pointed away from the canoe. As the current carried them off, Orlando noticed for the first time that not one of them had a tail. Within moments, they were lost in the mist again, but their high-pitched voices floated back for a while longer, singing some new hymn to the glories of elbow grease and shiny counters. Right, the farmer's wife, Orlando murmured as the nursery rhyme came back to him. Poor little things. What are you babbling about? Fredericks frowned at him, then shouted, Hey, where are we going? As the chief began paddling with renewed and even increased vigor toward the unexplored farther shore. The ice box, explained the tortoise. It is near the far end of the kitchen, and a place of many legends. In fact, stories tell that somewhere inside it lie sleepers, folks who have existed as long as the kitchen itself, but always in slumber, and who will dream their cold dreams until time itself ends if they are left undisturbed. Sometimes these sleepers, without ever waking, will predict the future to anyone lucky or unlucky enough to be nearby, or answer questions that otherwise would go unaddressed. Bad men no care about sleepers, the chief said, leaning into each stroke of the paddle. Them want gold. Ah, yes. The tortoise laid a stubby finger alongside his blunt beak and nodded. They have heard the rumors that one of the shoppers themselves has left a cache of golden treasure in the icebox. This may be merely a fairy tale. No one I know has ever seen one of the shoppers who are said to be godlike giants who come into the kitchen only when night is done, when all who live here are as helplessly asleep as those in the farthest depths of the icebox. But whether the gold is a myth or the truth, clearly these bad men believe it to be real. Help me out, Gardino, Fredericks whispered. What the hell is an icebox? I think it's what they used to call a refrigerator. Fredericks looked at the unstoppable mechanical movements of Chief Strike Anywhere as he paddled toward his lost son. This just scans and scans, doesn't it? He said. And then it scans some more. Excuse me. Actually, that's a fairly good place to stop there, because then the next bit is still part of that story, but it's a different section. Excuse me for the coughing and rasping on that last bit. This just scans and scans, doesn't it? He said. And then it scans some more. So, as I said, we got back into the kitchen, which I always enjoy. And I will be coming back 7 p.m. later today to read more. Beyond that, I'm trying to think if there's anything else I wanted to share with you. No, just it's really funny because it's been so long since I've read this stuff, So I remember some vague bits, and I remember, I liked this part, or I was pleased with this part, or here's another part that I kind of don't remember, and what happens here, and it's deep in the past. I mean, it's still my book, so I still, especially as I'm reading, I'll go like, oh yeah, of course, right. But it's still odd to have something that is now so far apart from me in time, and to be reading it again to a helpless, captive audience. No, well, you may be helpless and captive, but I still value you. Anyway, so with that, I am going to wrap it up for the night. I thank you, or for the morning, depending on where any of us are. And I thank you, as always, for spending time with me. It's a pleasure, and I am always grateful for it. I will be back, as mentioned, at 7 p.m. Later today, to continue. We will find out more about the icebox and some very mysterious things going on there. Excuse me, doing some of those voices really rasps me out. And we will meet pirates. of course, I just remembered pirates. There's pirates in the next part. So even if you can't tune in at 7 p.m. my time, go find the not the Facebook, the YouTube version that Chris Fobb is going to be putting up in the next day or so. Because pirates, how can you go wrong with pirates in a cartoon night kitchen? You can't. So again, take good care of yourselves. First step, take good care of yourselves. Second step, take good care of your friends and loved ones. Keep an eye out for others who might need your help, or just a kind word or a listening ear, or, as I always say, just a couple of bucks. Because most of the people out standing on street corners with cardboard signs, they're not faking. They're not faking. They're not, I remember back some years ago, a government official saying basically, these people are just scamming society. They go to these food banks and they stand there, and then they go up and they get free food. They should be working. I'm like, yeah, these people stand in line for hours to get some government cheese, and you think that somehow they're doing that because they don't want to work. Oh my Lord. So keep an eye out for people around. There's a lot of people you can do kind things for if you take the chances you go past. You've already done a kind thing for me, so I'm off your list, and now you can turn your attention to other things, as I am going to, which is turning my attention to bed once I push a certain 50-pound pit bull out of the way, because she is invariably oozed into my part of the bed by this time of the night, and I will have to fold her up like a particularly lumpy origami animal, like an origami animal made out of sandbags, and to get her out of the way so I can actually stretch out on my own bed. But anyway, enough of that, enough of all of my nonsense. I will see you very soon. Take care, be well, and thank you for reading. And I'm not talking about listening to me read or even reading my books. Just thank you for reading. We need more readers. All right. Peace. Arrivederci ragazzi. And I will see you all very, very soon.